As the lights went out, the final race of the DTM season here at Hockenheim was underway. A brilliant start from Mike Rockenfeller as he weaved his way through the cars, and so did René Rast. Nico Müller P1, but Mike Rockenfeller, would he find himself in P2? They were three abreast going through turn number 1 with Marco Wittmann and Timo Glock as well. Nico Müller, an absolute star at the start of the race, and Timo Glock and Marco Wittmann, well, they went wide, and that allowed Mike Rockenfeller to get to the inside, but René Rast was also charging as well, right alongside Jamie Green, and at this point, René Rast decided to make it, rather than 3 abreast, let's make it 4 abreast. As René Rast around the parabolica, heading up towards the hairpin on the inside line. Mike Rockenfeller at this point was P2, but then with a late charge and very late on the brakes, René Rast dived to the inside of Mike Rockenfeller and would chase down Nico Müller. René Rast finding himself at this point in P2. Unfortunately for one of the Super GT drivers, Nick Cassidy, this little touch on Jonathan Aberdeen, which Nick says was completely his own fault, spat him into the concrete barriers, then into the hoardings. That would be the end of the race for Nick Cassidy, sadly. One of the 3 Super GT drivers on the grid, ahead, of course, of the dream race to come at Fuji. Unfortunately, Daniel Juncadella would be out of the race as well. Here's our Motorsport Aston Martin car catching fire, so that was the end of the race for Danny Juncadella, and that brought a race suspension. But at the restart, it was Nico Müller from René Rast. As they headed towards the timing line then, Mike Rockenfeller in P3. Then it was Marco Wittmann and Timo Glock. So the race resumes. Nico Müller, who for so much of the season had chased René Rast for the Drivers' Championship, in the end having to take that P2 place in the Drivers' Championship, was determined to try and win the final race. René Rast in for his mandatory pit stop. He, of course, would return on cold tyres. He would be ahead of Nico Müller, but Nico Müller's tyres were up to temperature, so the fight would be on for the lead of the race between René Rast and Nico Müller. Spookily, of course, they had so much chasing during the course of the season on the way to the Drivers' Championship. Who would win out in this little battle between René Rast, who got very sideways, which allowed Nico Müller to go through and take up the lead of the race? So Nico Müller was P1, René Rast was P2, and Mike Rockenfeller was in for this as well as he dived to the inside at the hairpin. Mike Rockenfeller putting himself ahead of René Rast as well. So at this point, Nico Müller P1, Mike Rockenfeller P2, and P3 for René Rast as Nico Müller rounded the final turn of the final race of the season, and the fireworks erupted. He would win the final race of the season for Audi Sport Team Abt Sportsline. Nico Müller race winner, Mike Rockenfeller P2, René Rast, of course, the DTM champion, was P3, and all 3 of them celebrated with some brilliant donuts in front of tens of thousands of race fans.